Hey everybody, this is Dr. Argie from the Ask Dr. Argie Courageous Conversations Connect series. This is week 30. Can you believe it? Oh my goodness. For those of you who are new to the show, I'm Dr. Argie, and I am the founder and CEO of Faith Inc., that stands for Family and Individual Therapeutic Healing, and co-founder and CEO of Connections Matter LLC with my husband, Morgan E. Wilson Jr. And part of the dynamics of this show is to bring you hot topics, juicy conversations, and yeah, sometimes even courageous conversations, because we fundamentally believe here that courageous conversations connect, not disconnect. So I start the top of the show by asking you to do one thing for me. I asked you to oh my God, it's been a while. I asked you to STLC, share, tag, like, and comment. Share, 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 because we believe here that this is a dialogue, not a monologue. So it's not just for you, it's for someone else. Now, I want to be transparent that I have been away for a week or so, and part of that was that my dad was in the hospital. It was a pretty severe emergency that I had to deal with last week, and on Monday night I spent the entire night in the hospital. And then Wednesday, we had just gotten him out of the hospital, but in between that, I had gone to New York and done the Today Show, and then came back, and it just was a lot. It was a lot. So I hope that you all are still out there and still wanting to have courageous conversations, whether with me, and because I think we got a pretty good thing going here. We like to talk about the things that perhaps sometimes other people don't want to talk about, which is interesting. And you guys let me know that we've been on for about 2 minutes and 17 seconds, so let me know if you all are on. Send me some thumbs up, some smiley faces, some hearts, whatever your heart desires, whatever emotions that you're experiencing, send those to me. Let me know that you're listening. I was at church on Sunday, so I wanted to start off by talking about that. I want to start off by, first of all, thanking you all. Thank you for all of the warm wishes, all the, I see you guys. Elaine is on. Hey, Elaine. Hey, Tina. Hey, Hazel Ann. Thank you. I wanted to thank you guys for your thoughts, your prayers. Thank you for your kind wishes for my father. He's home. He's doing much better. Hey, Tina. Thanks for joining the show. I see some hearts and smiley faces. Hey, Velva Lily Jefferson from Philly. Thanks for joining the show. Thank you all for all of the messages, the prayers for my father. It was pretty serious. So that, I guess I really wanted to start off with my PSA. We're going to talk about forgiveness tonight and for the rest of the week. But I wanted to start off with a PSA about, Vel said, Vel with you, thank you. A PSA about allergic reaction. So what happened with my dad is that he had an allergic reaction to a medication. The medication he's on, blood pressure medication, as many people are, and the allergic reaction, he was on amlodipine, but it was also in the capsule. There was a mixture of amlodipine and benzodiazepine. And what I found out from my research is that medications that end in pril, right, they call them ACE inhibitors, those particular medications have a high probability of having an allergic reaction for those of us who are of African descent or people of color. Now, what's interesting about that is, and my sister actually does this. She is very committed to the clinical trials for people of color. Many of us don't participate in those clinical trials because we have cultural mistrust. But the problem with that is that, quite frankly, if pharmaceutical firms, pharmaceutical companies, which is really big business, if they don't have us to do those clinical trials on, then when they make decisions about the protocols and what is in the medication and how it helps, they don't necessarily have the right demographic by which to test on. And so we are, in some ways, can be like sitting ducks taking certain medications that we're not really sure how we're going to react. So that happened with my father. He called me, said that he had woken up. He had a swollen tongue. He couldn't swallow. He couldn't breathe. He already has breathing issues. And I immediately went into action. And I said, I left Benadryl, take the Benadryl. He said he couldn't take the Benadryl. He said he couldn't swallow. I said, you got to try. You got to try to swallow the Benadryl. You got to try to drink water, and I'll be right there. I only live about between 5 and 10 minutes away. I had just come home after running errands for lunch. Thank goodness I wasn't here at work. I was at home. And I jumped in the car and I said, keep talking to me while I'm on the phone with you. Because that way I could tell if he was able to still breathe, or if he had lost complete oxygen and ability to breathe. And when I got there, I assessed it. I called the doctor. He said, take him to the emergency. I rushed him to the emergency. And the good news is that they immediately took him. Shout out to Abington, gave him Benadryl and started giving him a steroid intravenously. And, that stopped the swelling. And then there was 2 more days in the hospital where they were doing tests. I am giving this PSA is because I want people to keep Benadryl if you need an EpiPen, or keep also aspirin in case you might have chest pain. Keep those not only in the house, but they have the little keychains with where you can put pills in them, and that's really great, so that if you're on the road that you have aspirin and you have Benadryl. That could make the difference between life and death. I think actually it did with my father, and I am so grateful, and to God be the glory that he is okay and that he's home, he's safe and sound, and we're figuring out some of the other health issues. But I thought that was important to share with all of you, simply because we're human, right? We don't realize how vulnerable we really are. Hey, Mary Lou, thanks for joining the show. And anything is possible. Anything can happen with these fragile vessels that we call our bodies, right? And we could have a reaction, something very minute, very simple. Seems like most of us are allergic to everything, especially during allergy season, ragweed or pollen. But, you got to pay attention to your body. You got to pay attention to the signs. You have to take action. And you try to be as proactive as you possibly can and not reactive. But if you are in a position where you are being reactive, have those things available to you while you're trying to assess the situation, and then following up with your doctor or your practitioner. That's my PSA. I believe it saved my dad's life. I'm so grateful that he's still here with us, and that clearly if he's still here, there's more work to be done. I know he means the world to me. Hopefully you all have someone, if it's not your mother or your father, if they're still not here, maybe there's someone that means the world to you as well. And it's important for us to take care of our bodies. And if you haven't actually gotten a med check, that's another thing that you can do. If you're taking medication, interestingly enough, sometimes the pharmacists know more than sometimes the doctors in terms of the impact that the medication. Now, there's a little bit of a system that they have where they put the medication in, and it will tell you if it intersects with another kind of medication. But check with your pharmacist. If you have a senior person in your life and they're on a lot of medication, take the list to the pharmacist, give them the list, and say, do these medications have allergic reactions to one another? They'll tell you. My father has some really good pharmacists that I've been talking to. And by the way, always, always, always make sure that you have your loved one's medication list in your phone or a list of them, because if there is an emergency, if you have to call the ambulance, if you have to take your loved one to the hospital, if you have to go, you wind up in the emergency, they're going to need to know what medications you're on, how often you're taking them, what the dosages are. They're going to need to know all that information. And they may need to really understand how they're reacting to one another. And what's interesting, guys, is that sometimes the hospitals don't talk with other hospitals, right? And they also the ER, they sometimes don't even have the information of the patient that's been coming to them. Those systems don't talk to each other. So you have to come equipped. You have to become your own advocate or the advocate of your loved one. You have to have the right information available to you at the time that you have that emergency, if it is an emergency, and just be prepared. If you have a story, if this has happened to you and you needed to be prepared or you weren't, please share your story. Shawnee's on. Hey, Shawnee, thanks for joining the show. And Elaine is on. Elaine says, very happy to hear that Dad's doing okay, doing better. As someone with severe allergies, that's something I've been slipping on. Not good, Elaine. I've had multiple friends recently scold me for not having either Benadryl or an EpiPen in my home. I've got to get that. Absolutely, Elaine. You got to get your Benadryl. You have to have the EpiPen. Have some aspirin, little baby aspirin on hand too, in case you do have some chest pain or someone you know. It doesn't have to be you. It can be someone you know. And by the way, right at those Rite Aids or the CVS, they have those little pill containers. They're on a keychain ring. All you do is put those little pills in there, and now you can have them to go with you wherever you are. You just don't know when the next emergency will occur. If not in your life or the life of a loved one, you could be the blessing to a perfect stranger in the grocery line or at the post office or, running errands or what have you, and then you're equipped with that information. So just remember that, life is precious, and we sometimes, I think, take life for granted because we're here. Hopefully we're fairly healthy, but really, as I always say, there is birth, there's death, there's the dash. If you're a believer, then you definitely believe that, you have eternal life. But while you're here on this planet, we only have a short number of years to make a difference, right? To make good on our dash, if you will. And you can't do that. And you can't be and do all that God has designed for you if you're not here and you're not well, you're not healthy. And sometimes we can't do anything about it. But there are other times when we can prevent ourselves from being injured or harmed and control the controllables. So give me some thumbs up, some smiley faces, whatever your emotion is that you're feeling right now. I want to see that. And do me a favor, an STLC, share, tag, like, and comment. If this has happened to you, if a loved one has ever been in distress, what did you do? How did you react? Did you get paralyzed? Sometimes you just have to kind of go over these things just in case something should occur over and over again so that you're not paralyzed. And so it can help you to really focus your energy on moving forward, if you will. So I hope that's helpful to you. Again, thank you for all of your warm wishes, prayers, all your messages. My father appreciates it. My family appreciate it as well. And tonight, we are on Mindful Mondays talking about forgiveness. Did you all know that yesterday, July 7th, was Global Forgiveness Day? Did y'all know that? I was going to talk about some other stuff, but I realized that yesterday, and I was like, forgiveness is hard for a lot of us. So I figured we'd talk about it. Global Forgiveness Day is a time to forgive, it says, and to be forgiven. It must be a pretty good thing, it says, because there are two groups that lay claim to Forgiveness Day, sometimes in the month of August, sometimes in the month of July. And so it started off as a National Forgiveness Day, and then it moved to a Global Forgiveness Day. So why is global? And then they also have, by the way, a World Forgiveness Day. Forgiving allows us to deal with and then look past the hurt and consequences of the offense. And it pardons the offender. So I figured it'd be something good for us to talk about. I think forgiveness is difficult for most of us. You all tell me what you think. When I have considered forgiving, when I've been offended, it's sometimes really hard, even though, we're these spiritual beings having a human experience. Sometimes when we think about the hurt, here's what I know for sure. That at times when we are offended or someone has harmed us or someone has injured us, we just want the person to hurt the way we hurt, right? That's kind of what happens. And we've got to sort of take a step back if we really are these spiritual beings having a human experience and think about how it is that either the spirit of forgiveness can be helpful to us and others, or how unforgiveness can be. Oh, my husband. He's over there in the office after showing up late from wherever. He had gone home to check the alarm, and then he came back to the office, and he yells over and says, "You can forgive me sometimes." Huh, interesting. Yes, honey, I can forgive you. And I think we're all deserving of forgiveness. But like I said, it's not always easy. Richard's on. Hey, Richard. Charlie's on. Charlie is across the pond. I believe he's at the North Sea Jazz Festival now, or maybe he's just traveling through Madrid or some other places that he said he was going to be going. So he is a world traveler, and he does have a brand. It's called Love the Way You Live, and it's awesome. So check him out, and check out his all of his posts on Facebook and on IG, because he will show you where he's at and what he's doing, which is phenomenal and fabulous. And he is truly loving the way he lives. I'm going to talk about a little bit about our experience too with our crew. I'm not sure if I'm going to talk about that tonight or whether I'm going to talk about that on Wednesday, but it's real dear to me. Sonny said it really is. Stephanie Barnhill's on. Hey, there's my my Kenyan sister. So what we're talking about, this concept of forgiveness and global, because forgiveness is not just communal. It's not individual. It's relational, and it's on the national level. It's on a global level. It's on the world level. That's why they have these particular days. But again, if you're just in the small place, the small little microcosm part of the world, then for you, whatever that infraction is may be very difficult to rationalize or to reconcile. Most times people will say, well, listen, Argie, people say this in the practice all the time when they come in for therapy. They'll say, now, when I tell you what they did to me, you'll agree that I should never forgive them. You'll agree that what they did was unforgivable. And I don't think that I will ever be able to forgive them. And it's not my place to judge at all. However, what I do know for sure is that if you embark on a journey of unforgiveness, the truth is that it will end up hurting you and harming you more than the other person. Why do I know that to be true? One, because I used to be a person that didn't forgive very easily years ago, and I found that the freedom of forgiveness really was for me. It's a gift. And I also recognize that at times when we're holding on to forgiveness, what we're really doing is we're saying that we don't want to let the person off the hook. We don't want to let them off the hook because we think that if we forgive them, then somehow that negates all of the harm that they've caused us or someone else. And that's not really exactly what that means. It simply means that it's not our responsibility to hurt. Like, you know how they say hurt people hurt people? It's not our responsibility to hurt back simply because somebody harmed us or hurt us. It's our responsibility to fully understand what happened. It may be that we allowed someone to treat us poorly for whatever reason. We teach people how to treat us. Maybe we sabotage the relationship, or we accept the people in our lives far past our expiration date. It's a little hot in here, so I'm fanning y'all. I'm sorry. I did think I turned the air on, but I don't know what happened. Hey, Mort. Maybe he can't hear me. I'm going to try to get him to turn the air on. And there are times when we have to also reconcile with the reality that we might be worthy of being forgiven, right? That we're not perfect beings. And so sometimes we're doing things that are harmful to other people. And so when we really kind of weigh it out, the truth is that forgiveness is available to all of us, not just some of us, all of us. And I was going to ask you, can you turn the air on if it's not on? So there's a couple things in this forgiveness territory that I really want to talk about. Bessie's on. Hey, Bessie, thanks for joining the show. Tracy's on. Hey, Tracy. Hey, Keisha. Keisha's on. Thanks for joining the show. This whole forgiveness thing is the truth. Oh, the fan. Thank you, Jesus. Don't be telling my secrets. He's talking about in 5 minutes I'll be burning up. That's true. Can you put it over there? Okay. Yeah. So, let's talk about this. Let's have a dialogue, not a monologue. And we say here on the show, on the Ask Dr. Argie Courageous Conversations Connect series, that this is about truth, trust, and transparency leading to transformational breakthroughs, right? Well, what's the truth? The truth is that, if you live long enough, right? You're going to be injured by someone. You can't be up close and personal with people. You can't be in an intimate relationship with someone without being harmed in some way, shape, or form. You hope that your injuries are sustainable, right? You hope that those internal injuries are not so deep that you can never recover from them. Yet at the same time, if now here's really the key, if you are truly unable, for whatever reason, you're unable or you're unwilling to forgive, then I want you to write this down. You sometimes will find yourself becoming the secondary perpetrator. I'm going to say that again. If you are truly unable or unwilling to forgive, you will find yourself becoming the secondary perpetrator. Well, why do I say that? What does that mean? Well, when we think about it, sometimes it's like a child touching the stove, right? They touch the stove, they realize it's hot, they got burnt, they don't want to touch it again. Why? Because they recognize it's going to hurt them again. So we subsequently, if we get injured by another person, then we sometimes close ourselves off. My good friend Sheila Boynton used to say, when I was a servant leader for the Sexual Abuse Survivors Ministry, it was called SAS, she would say that, the same way if you lock other people out, you have to recognize that you're locking yourself in. And so the whole secondary perpetrator syndrome is about oftentimes us then, when we're injured, engaging in behaviors that are harmful to ourselves. It is, whatever, it could be promiscuity. It could be just being angry and bitter and mean because we don't want to be hurt again. It could be distancing ourselves from other people. And all because, in some ways, because we're injured, we don't want to have that courageous conversation, or we're unable to have that courageous conversation first with, our source, and then with ourselves, and then perhaps with the other person, to say, you know what, I'm going to release myself first from the spirit of unforgiveness that really, what goes along with the spirit of unforgiveness? Injury, pain, disappointment, frustration, anger, rage, bitterness. All of those emotions go along with the spirit of unforgiveness. So then what happens is that it crowds out all the other things that we possibly could be experiencing. It's like weeds that crowd out the beautiful flowers because they are overarching everything else. So the joy, the happiness, the kindness, the engagement, the contentment, all of those additional things that are available in abundance to us, right? That those negative feelings will crowd those out if we hold on to the spirit of, quite frankly, unforgiveness. Sadi said, turn the air is on. The air is on now. But Morgan is right. I will be too cold in a few minutes, and then I'll probably ask him to turn it off. But for now, it's good. It's good. So tell me what you all think. I threw out a few words that I think are relevant when it comes to the spirit of unforgiveness. I threw out secondary perpetrator. I threw out the toxic emotions that we hold on to that don't allow us to be better versus bitter, right? I threw out reconciliation. By the way, it's really important that you understand that if you're embarking on a journey of forgiveness, forgiveness does not mean two things. Forgiveness does not mean full agreement. So if you forgive somebody, it doesn't mean that you agree that it was okay to hurt you, right? That's not what it means. It doesn't even mean that you agree that it's okay what they did, right? That you're sanctioning their behavior. Doesn't mean that. And forgiveness does not mean complete reconciliation. It doesn't mean that. Now, if the reconciliation happens and you're able to engage in a relationship simply because you were able to have the courageous conversation and set some boundaries and come up with some agreements with one another, fabulous, wonderful. There's a lot of hurting people out there, and all they want is to have sometimes a conversation to fully or partially understand what happened so that they can move on with their lives. So that's great if you can get there. But if you can't, then you can't. If you can, I'm sorry, again, I'm having postnasal drip here. Excuse me. If you can't, you can't. However, if you are reconciled in your own spirit, then having those conversations, even with yourself, about moving in that direction can really help you out. And I don't know if you all saw that movie years ago, Precious. It was a great movie. Monique, who played the mother, and I forget the young woman that played Precious. And I got a lot of heat for that. I did a couple of panels in New York City when that movie first came out, and I took a lot of heat. Thank you. I had one, but I'll take another one. Thank you, babe. I took a lot of heat for that panel discussion because I had said something like, I don't believe in complete cutoffs, right? And so they were sort of asking the question, well, if and give me some thumbs up if you all remember, those of you who are watching that movie years ago, Precious. Monique, she acted the heck out of that movie. I don't think that she got paid what she was worth for that movie. And the young woman that played Precious, she did really well with the movie as well. However, there was a overarching theme to that movie, and the overarching theme was, if you had someone, because if you all saw it, send me some thumbs up or some smiley faces or some hearts. The mother, who was mentally ill, was horrifically abusive to Precious. I mean, on every single level. She was emotionally abusive, she was physically abusive, she was sexually abusive, she was mentally abusive, she was verbally abusive. She just was abusive to her daughter. And there were people in Precious's world that knew how much pain she was in, and they sort of wrapped their arms around her, like at the school that she was at. And I always believe that even though you may have people in your world that don't care about you or that treat you poorly, find one person, find the helper, right? It might be in school, it might be on the, as a coach, but find the helper, find someone that you can depend on, that you can trust in. They're usually out there. And in this particular case, I think it was Precious's teacher, and it was a social worker. And I'll make the story shorter. At the very end, Precious had gotten pregnant and she had had a child. And she started thinking about the trajectory of her life. And when she went to the social workers meeting, because they were going to have a courageous conversation, and Precious wanted to have it, she desperately wanted to have a relationship with her mother, but the mother was not capable of having a relationship. And so she wanted, I think, in her heart of hearts, to forgive her mother for all of the abuse that she had incurred at the hands of her mother. But as she engaged in that conversation, the mother basically said, what about me? What about me? Why are we talking about you? This is all about me. And she wasn't able. Have you ever met a person or engaged in a relationship where you either want more for the person than they want for themselves, or you so desperately want them to be able to be who you need them to be, but they just simply can't? Maybe because they didn't have the model in their own relationship, maybe because they aren't capable because they are addicted to drugs, or that they have a mental illness. It may be that it's not that they can't, it's not that they won't, they just can't. And at that point, when Precious actually walked away, if you remember the movie, when she walked away, she was reconciled in her spirit. That's kind of how I took it after a while. She was reconciled that I've done the best that I could do to have this relationship, but for whatever reason, I cannot have a relationship with this person. My hope or my fantasy was that she was able, Precious, to walk away and embark on a journey of forgiveness of her mother's inability to parent her, so that Precious would not repeat and carry out that same legacy of toxic abuse to her child. That's the freedom of forgiveness. That's why we embark on the journey of forgiveness. It is not for the other person. If the other person benefits, wonderful. But at the end of the day, it is to free us from all the things that would keep us bound from our best life, that would keep us from experiencing the joy, the love, the freedom, the abundance that this life actually has to offer us. Carla's on. Hey, Carla. Dorothy Jamel's on. Thanks for joining the show. William Carroll is on. Keisha's on. Elaine is on. Thanks for joining. Vernon's on. Velva, I got some comments, so I'm going to read your comments. I've been just running my mouth. Seti's on. Cedric's on. Sonia's on. So I'm going to go back and read the comments and see what your thoughts are. I'm not sure what the first one is. I'm going to go back. Elaine talks about my dad. So then I'm going to go to Keisha says, hey, I love this topic. I'm glad it's helpful because most of us suffer with this as a difficult challenge to deal with forgiveness. Elaine says, wow. And then let's see. Vent in the buildings, not powerful. Amen. So Sony says, I have anger, hurt, sadness all in one right about now. I'm not bothered though. I'm mostly hurt and sad. Well, you know, that is, I thank you, one, Sony, for being honest and authentic with us. We believe here that love, light, truth, and accountability leads to open freedom, right? And so if we start with being transparent that we're hurt or that we're sad or that we're walking with disappointment and we give language to that, we verbalize it, we articulate how we're feeling, then we can begin to deal with it, right? We also say here on the show that we cannot heal if we don't feel, right? And we cannot heal what we do not reveal. Let me say that again. We cannot heal what we don't feel, right? And we can't reveal what we don't feel. And ultimately, it's about the healing. So Keisha says, it means I no longer hold on to the feelings you caused and can have moved on. Absolutely. It means you're not holding on to it, right? I referred to Sheila and Tamika, my partners in the SAS ministry when we were doing that years ago. We're still doing it. I'm just not the servant leader anymore. And one of the things that Sheila would talk about is that this process of recovery when we're hurt is an ing, not necessarily an ed. What that means is that we don't necessarily see ourselves as recovered if you've been sexually abused or physically abused or emotionally abused or someone has harmed you. What you don't want to do is you don't want to hurt other people because you've been harmed. So you continue to stay in the process, but it is a process. And because it's a process, you don't specifically get to, okay, it's an ED, I'm recovered, I'm done, it's over, I'm never going to have to deal with this again. It's an IEG. So what happens, Keisha, what happens, Bev, is that we get better at it. We get to the place with God's help, with our spiritual foundation, with the work. I always say you got to do your own work. We get to the place where those injuries no longer have the same impact that they once did. So those scars, just like if you had a physical wound or injury and then you get a scab and then the scab goes away and then the skin texture is a little lighter, it might be a little sensitive, but it doesn't hurt in the same way that it once did when that injury was fresh. That's what happens when you embark on the journey of forgiveness. Velva says forgiveness is for big people, for unforgiveness is for petty people. Well, yeah, I do think that it requires, Velva, it requires that we go deeper, right, in our internal processes, right? And it is for grown-ups. You know, we can say to children, like, here's the process of forgiving, but sometimes they may not necessarily get it until we model for them. That's why our modeling for our children is so important, because if we're walking around with the spirit of unforgiveness, then what do you think they're seeing? They then take their lead from us. And if they're watching us not forgive, if they're watching us allow, quite frankly, our unforgiveness to eat us up inside, and then we're actually then projecting that out into the universe to other people, then unfortunately, we're then passing on that negative cycle and what we call as clinicians the transgenerational pattern. So then it doesn't take long for us to figure out why this whole system is toxic, whether it comes from the grandparent to the parent to the children to the grandchildren. The whole system becomes toxic because people are walking around bound by all of these experiences and unable and unwilling to grow through them. Not just go through them, but grow through them. Delva says unforgiveness is not natural. It is a learned behavior and it can be unlearned. Absolutely, that's what I mean by the transgenerational patterns. If we begin to embark on that journey, what's for sure, one thing for sure, two for certain, is that somebody's watching. People are paying attention. And so then our journey doesn't just become our journey for us and our growth and development. Our journey becomes a journey that's meant for somebody else to glean from. So our tests become our testimony. our messes become our message, right? And then we begin to walk in our destiny on mission to actually fulfill our purpose in abundance, right? But none of that can happen if we're walking around bound to the spirit of unforgiveness. Carla's still on, and Jamel, Keisha said, didn't see it, but I remember, oh, you were talking about Precious. Yeah, it was really good. Elaine says, I think it's easier to forgive others at times, but harder to forgive self. Like I released that person, but I still would struggle with giving myself the same grace. That's very interesting because I don't think that, Elaine, you're unlike a lot of people who sometimes will work harder for another person than for ourselves. And what I say when we're embarking on a journey of forgiveness, since when I used to do be the servant leader for the sexual abuse survivors ministry at Enon, one of the things I would say is like every 7 weeks we would begin, we would we begin to talk about, for example, forgiveness. Why? Because sometimes you embark on a journey of life and end up being harmed or injured by multiple people, and it's very, very difficult to like embark on this journey of forgiveness for everybody that's offended you, right? And so we ask people to think about who is the person who is most important at this particular time in your life to embark on a journey of forgiveness. Interestingly enough, many people end up saying that themselves, they were the person that they really needed to forgive for whatever reason, and that they were harder on themselves than they were on other people. They had, long since forgiven other people, but they were still holding themselves in bondage. And guess what? We're way more transparent than we realize. And so if we're walking around in bondage, if we're unhappy with ourselves, we don't like ourselves, we don't value ourselves, we don't see our self-worth, all of that emanates. It's like a neon flashing light that says, I don't like myself, I don't love myself, I don't forgive myself, I don't believe I'm worthy of this abundance, and really, quite frankly, walking the journey that God has designed for me on this earth. Vernon's on. Hey, Vernon, thanks for joining the show. Velvet said Ephesians 4:31-32. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you, along with malice. Be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving each other, just as God in Christ has forgiven you. Absolutely. And sometimes, even with our scripture, we struggle, right? We can read a scripture. It sounds good. It sounds tight and right, right? And yet at the same time, it's like, how am I going to do that? Like, I know what the words on the page say, but how am I going to translate that into action, right? That impact me and the people around me. And sometimes it can be going into your prayer closet, whatever faith you belong to, and just being prayerful that you experience the spirit of deliverance, right? So that you're not bound with that. Because sometimes there are tasks, like when we're really, really hurt and wounded, you know when you're hurt and wounded, you know that when you have these offenses, because it's hard to get them out of your head, right? You go to sleep with them, you wake up with them, you obsess about them, you can't really experience joy because they're crowding the space out of your head. You allow other people to rent free space in your head. Think about that. Where else on this planet, if you're not homeless, can you rent free space, but in someone else's head and in your head, right? No place else on the planet. Everything else costs money. At least it costs dollars, currency, right? But for free, we can have folks up in our head around these injuries, and they're renting free space and not allowing us to really fully enjoy the journey. Sony says, then what can you do to move on when someone just ejected you out of their life, of an infant life that you practically raised? My heart hurts. Okay, I think I understand that statement. It's, what do you do if someone injected you with somebody that you practically raised or that you raised and they don't want you in their life and it hurts? What I would say, and if that is you, Sonny, or if that's someone that you know, first of all, thank you for being authentic and sharing, because sounds like it's really painful. We know for sure, one thing for sure, two for certain. Who we cannot control are other people, no matter who they are. Maybe infants or babies, right? Because they're completely dependent on us. But outside of that, we have no control over someone else. We could be in a long-term relationship and they could decide one day, I don't want this anymore, and leave. We could birth someone, a child. We could give and invest our heart and soul into someone, expecting sometimes at least the return on our investment being that they turn into productive citizens and we're able to maintain a relationship. And they could decide, for whatever reason, they don't want to be in relationship with us. And quite frankly, that hurts. So I would say, don't run away from the pain. Acknowledge the pain. Recognize that that experience is painful. And yet, if you hold on to not forgiving that person, which is your choice, just recognize that the secondary perpetrator will be you. And so you then end up oftentimes harming yourself, because sometimes what happens, like I said, the kid who touches the stove and doesn't want to get burned again, we then bury ourselves or block ourselves off from other people. We don't engage in relationships that are healthy for us, oftentimes because we're sabotaging, because we don't want to be hurt again. We're unwilling to reinvest in other people because we don't trust people. And it becomes a downward spiral. We then end up being the, actor in our own play, right? But instead of it being a, beautiful story, it becomes a horror movie. And it doesn't serve us very well. So there's not a huge amount. I would say you could also write the person a letter if they're unwilling to talk to you and share how you're hurt, and have them to write you back. At least maybe you might get some answers. But then the last part of that is acceptance, right? So we talked to you a couple of months ago about grief. And forgiveness, part of forgiveness is the grieving process. So even if a person hasn't died physically, we really do engage in a grieving process if a person has harmed us, or we're in a relationship and for whatever reason that person has rejected us. We're grieving. So those stages of grief are real. Sometimes we're in denial. Sometimes we're angry. Sometimes we're bargaining because we're trying to stay in the relationship and to no advantage of our own. Sometimes we are just depressed, right? So there's the denial, there's the anger, there's the bargaining, there's the depression, and then finally the hope is that we get to a level of acceptance. Again, acceptance not being agreement. We still may not agree that the person made the right decision. We still may not agree that the person should have done what they did. However, if we accept that this is what has happened and that we need to embark on a journey of healing, right? So that we feel what we feel, and then we begin to reveal other parts of ourselves to move closer to that healing. Then we're on a journey that hopefully will not only help ourselves, but someone else, and perhaps that person may come around. Jillian's on. Hey, Jillian. Corey's on. Nikki, Asha, Sylvia is on. Let's see. Morgan. Hey, Morgan. Congratulations, mommy. I love you, girl. Latanya's on as well. Darlene is on. Everett. Wendell is on. Stephanie's on. So tell me, guys, Darlene's on. Hey, Darlene. Stephanie says, what if the person is deceased? So that's a good question. If you're just hopping on, we are talking about forgiveness, right? And we're talking about this particular journey of forgiveness. Who is it for, and how do we forgive what we conceive as or perceive as the unforgivable? What is that journey about? And so Stephanie's asking, and by the way, if you like this content, guys, please STLC, share, tag, like, and comment, share, because this is a dialogue, right? And so this might be helpful for you, and if it's helpful for you, then hopefully it's helpful to somebody else. So share it, call your friends, tag them, tell them that we're here, and we're having the courageous conversation on this platform. So I think it was Stephanie that said, what if the person is deceased? What do you do if you are trying to forgive that person and they're deceased and you feel like there's nothing you can do? They died, you didn't get to tell them how you felt. By the way, again, I keep referencing it because I think it was really relevant in terms of the SAS ministry that I participated in for 10 years as a servant leader. One of the things that would happen is that people would come in and it was an anonymous group. We believed in confidentiality, so I can't share any names other than the facilitators. And many people would want to either tell someone, the person that violated them, or they would be upset because the person died, and that they felt like they missed their opportunity to tell that person how they felt or to forgive, or they felt like, well, I even missed my opportunity to forgive that person because in order to forgive them, the person has to be here. No, not so much. It would be nice if the person is here, excuse me, for you to have the conversation with, but it doesn't have to be. You can embark on a journey of forgiveness. You are not bound to holding on to those toxic emotions simply because that person is not here. You can embark, you can write them a letter, even if they're not here, right? Because the spiritual realm is still present. Write them a letter, say how you feel, share what your thoughts were or your feelings or your emotions about the infraction. What is it that you would want them to know? The goal of even the writing exercise is to free yourself from all that you have held inside of you that keeps you bound and keeps you, quite frankly, distant and disconnected from your hope, your freedom, the joy, the happiness that you are destined and, quite frankly, deserving of in this world that we call life. Sonny said, absolutely, Dr. Argie, I'm really working on accepting this. I still hurt in the process, though. Understandable. Understandable. I'm not here to tell you that it's not going to hurt. Hey, Raj just joined the show. And Raj, take care of yourself. I saw earlier you weren't feeling well. I'm not here to tell you that when people do things to harm us, that it doesn't hurt us. And we should acknowledge the hurt. That is the only way that we are going to heal. That is the only way that we will recover, is if we acknowledge the hurt. If we cut ourselves, we would bleed. It would hurt. So we have to acknowledge it. Do you get cut and not say ouch? No. So if you have emotional injuries or pain, we need to acknowledge that. At the same time, the acceptance piece, and Stephanie Sani, I like she put accepting in capital letters, because the accepting piece is actually the key, right? Because what happens is the emotional pain and turmoil that we are in, all of it is embedded in our unwillingness or our inability to let the injury go, to let it go. That doesn't mean it never happened. It doesn't mean that you brush it off as if it doesn't exist or erase it. It simply means that you're embarking on a journey of letting it go to the extent that it no longer has a front row seat in your life, in your mind, in your body, in your spirit. It means that you let it go to an extent that it's not impacting you and the relationships that you're in a negative way, right? It means that, and I use this experience, like, I like to, lose my earrings, right? And when I used to lose my earrings, I see a lot of thumbs up and smiley faces and hearts, great. When I used to lose one of my earrings, I would always try to go back and trace my steps, because why? I felt like I lost my earring. It was a part of a pair, and I wanted to find it. I lost it, right? And when we lose something, we want it back. But when we let it go, even those toxic emotions that we feel about those injuries, when we let them go, what we're basically saying is we don't want that back. We're willing, right? Hear me clearly, to close that chapter, like the chapter in the book. Turn the page and go to the new chapter. The new chapter, let's say the old chapter was filled with hurt and pain and disappointment and frustration, right? Well, how about the new chapter has the ability to be filled with love and joy and, jubilance and happiness and sincerity and integrity and hope and fulfillment and abundance, right? So if it's filled with all that in the next chapter, right? Why would we stay in the previous chapter and not be willing to turn the page? Turning the page is what it means to embark on the level of acceptance that, yeah, it happened. And guess what? What I won't be doing is taking my past pain into my future abundance. I'm going to say that again. What I won't be doing is taking my past pain and walking it into my future of abundance. And what the abundance is whatever you make it. Whatever you design and declare it to be lined up with your source, it can be. You have to believe it. You have to create the energy around it, right? You have to set the atmosphere. And then you have to make it happen by taking action with yourself. And like I said, if you're the person that needs to be forgiven, then you take action with yourself and embark on that journey of forgiveness. So subsequently, then you can have surrounding you a camp of people that are like-minded, that also are setting the tone in the atmosphere for a life of abundance, and that are not stuck in the history of their past injuries, right? Because our history, as my Pastor Waller used to say, is meant to inform us. Our history is not meant to define us. But too often, we'll meet people in the future and they will say, let me tell you about my history. And it's okay. Of course, I'm a family therapist and a relationship therapist, so I'm always asking people in the practice about their history. But the reason why I ask them and the reason why you need to be asking yourself is not so that you can revisit it over and over and over again, right? It's for you to learn something. It's for you to understand it, right? Because knowledge is power, absolutely, if you learn something from it and then you use it, right? But instead, sometimes what we do is repeat. We repeat the injury, we repeat the tape, we repeat the infraction, we repeat the offense over and over and over. We replay that tape, and so we're constantly re-injuring ourselves. That's what I mean about the secondary perpetrator. That is very different than reviewing. If we review something, we're reviewing it for a level of understanding, a level of awareness that allows us to both accept and then move on. Not move on with the spirit of insensitivity to what happened, but move on with a level of awareness, one, so that it doesn't happen again, because now we have knowledge, and two, with a level of awareness that allows us to pay it forward. What did we mean by paying it forward? That means, again, that as we're growing, as we are expanding, as we are accepting our future of abundance, guess what? Other people get to glean from that. Other people are watching and paying attention. And what they're saying is, if you can go through all of that, if you can experience all of that trauma, and you can end up on the other side, then what that means, what does that mean for me? Well, it means that blessings are in the neighborhood, right? If one person can do it, that means everyone can do it. And it just requires that we put the work in. My niece Nicole's on. Hey, Nicole. Roger's still on. He's feeling better. That's great. Stephanie's on. She says yes. Stacy, thanks for joining the show. Elaine said amen. Somebody said that's a drop the mic moment. Swift is on. Thanks for joining the show, Swift. We are talking about, and Tani says, yeah, she said about acceptance. We are talking about forgiveness. And if y'all haven't wondered tonight, maybe it's because I miss you all, because it's been a little bit of time, but I'm a little hyped about this subject because I feel like there's some freedom in it for us, for all of us. This is the stuff that I talk about on a daily basis, right? But there's a freedom that's in this power of forgiveness that is available to all of us, right? And we can set the tone for the next generation to level up if they're not holding themselves bound to all of this injury. I'm not here to say that nobody's going to ever get hurt, that if you dare to love, that you will not be rejected. That is kind of silly, right? Because, you know, in this world that we call life and in relationships and in this, we're in the spirit of humanity, we all will get injured in some way, shape, or form, but we can grow through it. We can land on the other side of it. Wendell's on. Hey, Wendell, thanks for joining the show. And on landing on the other side of it, Darlene said this is a huge issue. It allows us to help other people, right? It allows us to utilize our experiences, not just for us, but for other people, for the next person who's watching you. Have you ever had an experience where you're going through something, right? And you don't really even know. Like this happened to me a couple times. I didn't understand. As a matter of fact, it happened to me just Sunday. I don't know if you all, as quite a few people who attend Enon was, Rev was off the chain. He his sermon on Sunday was the title was "It's Your Time." And he was talking about Morgan. I don't know if Morgan's still on, but he was talking about Morgan and Corey and the birth of their beautiful baby, Corey and Morgan's beautiful baby, Corey. And he was talking about the birthing of something. How many of you know and you feel that you're on the precipice of birthing something, but it's hard? And in the midst of birthing something, there are sometimes these barriers that, whether it's like a birthing of a baby and there's contractions and labor, or whether it's just obstacles in your way or frustration or disappointment, but there are barriers. What was interesting is that after the sermon, I very, very much resonated with what the sermon, the topic was. And so I walked up for the altar call. And, I was just in the spirit, and I was just thanking him, I think, for all the blessings. And, I just really felt like the spirit within me. And I felt like, yes, this sermon. Many people feel like it's for them, and that was fine. I was feeling like it was for me. Y'all were there, give me the thumbs up and the smiley faces and the hearts. And after the service, I don't think she's on. I hope that it's okay. In fact, maybe I won't say her name, but she knows who she is if she's on. She came up to me and she said, "You don't know how much watching you has blessed me." She said, "I can't even put into words the connection that I have with what you do and what you say and how you are blessing." What she didn't know in that spirit is that I had some doubts of my own about how I'm doing what I'm doing, but I trust God to lead me in doing this work that is my mission. And so we linked up. But how about you? How many of you out there recognize that as you're going through or growing through, and as you are having those growing pains, as you are birthing the book, as you're birthing your new business, as you're birthing going back to school, as you're birthing the new relationship, as you're birthing the brand new you, how many of you know, one, that it's not easy, two, it's going to cost you something, and three, somebody is watching you that is going to be blessed by you, and four, if you allow the spirit of unforgiveness to keep you bound, then it may prevent you from birthing that thing that you're destined to birth to move to your next level. That's how powerful the spirit of unforgiveness is, that keeps us from actually living the life that we are intended to live. And so then it no longer becomes the person that hurt you, the person that rejected you, the daughter that walked away or didn't really want to be bothered with you, or the divorce that you had, or the job that you didn't get. It no longer becomes all of that. It becomes you making a decision and declaring that you will excel, that you will ascend beyond the history of your pain and move to the next level. You will turn the page, leave the pain where it is, and open yourself up to the new relationship, the book, the life that God has for you. That's how powerful it is to make a decision and a declaration to not stay stuck in the spirit of unforgiveness. I know I'm on the right page with this. I know that this is a message for someone. Why? Because too many of us are stuck there. And it's painful. It absolutely is. But if you allow the pain to stay stuck inside of you and get paralyzed, guess what? They won. They've won. And what we want here at Faith Inc. and Connections Matter is we believe in the crew. Connecting relationships for epic wins. We all win. If we do some of these things that allow us to be free from some of the things that have kept us stuck so that we can live our best lives and be healthy, then you win. No matter where you're going, no matter what direction, you're moving in a direction that will allow you to live ultimately your best life. Not perfect, but your absolute best life. Melissa's on. Hey, Melissa. Angel's on. Nikki's on. Thanks for joining the show. Darlene is on. I know that what I'm sharing is resonating. Give me some thumbs up, smiley faces, hearts if this is resonating for you. I know it's resonated for me. The spirit of unforgiveness does not allow us to be free. However, if we embark on a journey, if we just trust him, if we get to a place where we're just sick and tired of staying stuck in those emotions, those toxic emotions of unforgiveness, pain, hatred, rage, disappointment, frustration, if we just allow ourselves to move the needle just a little bit, guess what? God will do the rest. He really will. And it's not even about the person that actually hurt you. Because sometimes they're sleeping good at night. They really are. Sometimes they don't even know that they hurt you, or they do know that they hurt you, and that was their intention anyway. But God has a greater plan. And so those persons sometimes are just used as an instrument to move the needle, to open you up to all that He has for you, right? And sometimes we got to go through a little pain. You know, you heard that saying, no pain, no gain. We have to go through a little pain, right, to ultimately open us up to enormous and abundant power. From pain to power. It is absolutely worth your investment in yourself to do this work, to free yourself so you can go to the next level. I think Nikki's still on. Alvita is on. Thanks for joining the show. If you all are just hopping on, I just want to thank you, because this is an important topic. This is Mindful Mondays. We will be doing WIOW, Work It Out Wednesdays. What I ask for you all to do is STLC, share, tag, like, and comment. Tomorrow on Testimonial Tuesdays, I just ask for you to give your testimonies and give us some questions that you want us to answer as we engage in a rich dialogue on Work It Out Wednesdays. And then we have Thoughtful Thursdays. You all know my Thoughtful Thursdays are off the chain because it comes from my heart, right? And so I usually share something, that is meant to inspire, empower, motivate you, go to your next level, to level up. And then we have Freedom Fridays. I'm going to be doing some traveling, but I'm still going to come to you on Work It Out Wednesdays and on Wednesday night as our live. And I got so caught up in this topic that I did not give a shout out to Coco Golf, right? And her family. Her coach, Courtney Scott, is from Philly. And I actually worked as an assistant coach at Drexel, and also a very good friend of mine, dear friend of mine who went to Girls High and also went to Howard. Carla Scott Taylor was there. I got to watch her at Wimbledon. So I just want to give a congratulations to the entire golf family. The best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. I know that your daughter is going to be a star. She's shining already. Her star is shining bright. And so I just wanted to give a shout out and congratulations. It was my intention to do that at the beginning of the show, and I forgot to do that. So I hope this, guys, was helpful to you. I look forward to Work It Out Wednesdays, and let me know what it is that you are struggling with regards to forgiveness. My hope is that we join this journey in the spirit of forgiveness together, and that we work on freeing ourselves so that we can ultimately live our best lives. Listen, it's been a great night. This is Dr. Argie, your global relational transformational coach. I want you to have a beautiful night on purpose, from my heart to yours. And you guys know I love you. There's nothing you can do about it. I see a lot of hearts and smiley faces. I will see you next time. I love you guys. Bye-bye.